questions.
What's your mission? Any one of you can answer it, or all three of you can answer it together. But
really, it's to prepare kids for the rigors of kindergarten. We really want to get kids ready for kindergarten, but we also want to work with parents to help them understand the importance of what it means to be ready.
So, having said that, what is one thing that you can think of that you would like to do that you haven't been able to do? I mean, not the pipe dream version, but a realistic one. And then why hasn't that been done would be the second follow-up question.
Let me answer that before Jody does. On just the most basic thing from a parent perspective, I think, is to get their child in and get them screened as soon as possible. Screening takes place, we try to target the kids between 3.5 to a 4-year-old. So if they could get their child screened before 4 years of age, that allows any entity like ourselves or any other in the community to get a baseline of where their children are and to put interventions in place if need be. So I think the message to the community at large would be is to get your child screened as soon as possible.
And what percentage is getting screened?
I would say we have about 90% that actually are screened prior to kindergarten.
But probably in the 60% range as 3.5-year-olds to 4-year-olds. So I think, you know, that 6 months could make a huge difference on having a child ready for kindergarten versus by the time they get into kindergarten, they're here and they stay here, because that achievement gap is what's so important to all of us.
So the push is not, which I probably was one of them. When you think of screening, you're screening for kindergarten. That mentality, theory, mindset, whatever you want to call it, has to be thrown away.
Yes.
And you have to somehow change that message to screening at 3.5.
Yeah, it's an early childhood.
Are we hearing that though? I mean, you know what I mean? Is the message loud and clear that we should be screening at 3.5, not, oh my God, kid's going to kindergarten next year, we better get him screened?
Because that's what a lot of parents do think, is it's a kindergarten screener.
Absolutely.
But it's not.
Well, because it's mandatory, you're supposed to be screened. You have to be screened by the time they enter kindergarten. So I think that's the, you know, the misnomer that's out there related to that. But just to comment, you said 3 to 3.5. I think Jody and the professionals would tell you 3.5 to 4, because that 3-year-old is still gaining some of the skills that by the time they get them in at that early age, they might have to rescreen them. So the better, you know, if you wait that 6 months and give them until their 42nd month, I think you'll get better.
So do you say, are you saying that the 90% is at 4 or 90% is
By the time they get to kindergarten.
So
September 1st.
do you have statistics on the age, like 5, 4? Do you know?
We did bring that with. But
I mean, just do you have a dart? I mean, are you talking 25% of 4-year-olds? 10%? Do you think?
Well, when I say 90%, that would be 90% of the kids going into kindergarten.
Correct.
Screened.
And on some years, it's even more than that, because there's been some years where we've had 8 or 12 had not been screened out of 300, so that's a pretty strong percentage. But I would think that we screen somewhere between 50 and 60% by the time they're 4, you know, to 4 years and a couple months maybe. So I think the bulk of them are doing that, but it's not all of them, and I think all of them would be better served if they got screened by the time they were 4 years old.
Okay.
And we can send that data out. That's an annual report. But that's an annual report that we give, because in Pam's world of finances, the school is incentivized to get them as 3-year-olds. You get more money screening them as that 3-year-old, lesser money at 4-year-old, and lesser money at 5-year-old. And then you get no money if they've been in kindergarten for 3 months, or 30 days.
There is numerous sort of check marks for, you know, or checkpoints for when parents are getting information, starting when they are about, you know, 3, telling them this is coming, you know, get ready, you're going to get, you know, a chance to sign up. And so there is a good system in place, but, you know,
so those letters and phone mail and phone messages are coming from Jefferson Learning Center, and that's the mail you'll get related to screening is early childhood programs at Jefferson Learning Center, and how important it is to get your child in and get screened.
There's a valid point if we're talking kindergarten readiness versus early childhood. So if parents are hearing, I need to have my child screened
If that message
for
clear is
kindergarten,
clear.
then I have until
They go to kindergarten.
3/4. Yes.
Oh, sure.
When we message it, though, we do message early childhood screening.
But that's not what they're hearing. I mean, so it's
Sure.
I think we might have to market that a little bit.
That's
Put a
what
And
spin on that.
we've met a few times, just, in the last couple of months, talking about other collaborations we might be able to make to get that message out there, stronger, and different ways to possibly try and reach the parents who the paper or the phone call isn't getting to. So, the
Do you
stand
have like a cultural liaison, like I think that they have in the schools, to reach parents and to disseminate some of this information on what you should be doing early childhood, with your kids, and how is that reaching them besides your
the
mainstream?
information going in.
It goes out in the different languages, but we do not have a specific person that disseminates the information.
So if Lee makes a phone call and it's someone who doesn't speak English,
If it's a Spanish-speaking family, we have Julia come in and do the translating. If it's a Somali, then we do work with West Central Collaborative.
Are you trapping your ABE population?
In what way? Utilizing them to assist with phone calling and such?
Well, kind of like Jackie's question about disseminating that.
Yes.
They're on site.
Yep.
They may not have a child, but they have connections to lots of children.
Our parent educator does go in and visit with them every once in a while about screening and such. And then we do have a program called ABE Plus, where some of the families are sending their young children to preschool, and parents are getting parenting education, and there's a information sharing in that regard.
Well, because I can also see you using that model of where you maximize your transition time. I mean, that is something that we're not doing in our Kennedy and Roosevelt, and our walk time is significant in those buildings, where we could better maximize that transition time in some way to help learning. ABE is a similar situation, is how could you build in some of that parent education or early child needs or skills into your transition time, into your activities, into your project outcomes, and have that be the lesson of the day, instead of just once a year.
I think that's one of the positives about the mosque getting in place in this community, is we'll be able to reach the Somali population a lot easier, and they'll be on site a lot more. It's a little more difficult with some of the other communities, and not having that meeting place that you might be able to target more specifically, but I think your points will take, Jackie, how can we outreach better?
I don't know the status of the Lincoln School, but that was becoming a Latina church, correct?
Yep.
And so that would be
That's
another
one of our
door to knock.
goals, is to have conversations with them once they get up and operating, and very similar to what we're doing in the mosque.
They have to be close, right?
they are operating.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so,
They
because
are
they were
operating.
ready, when we did that tour session, he was planning for service on Sunday the next week, that they took possession, and so they have to be.
Well,
They've
there are
been
other
operating for about
Spanish-speaking
3
churches.
Right, yep, absolutely. But if that's where we reach them, is through their faith-based community, we need
Absolutely.
to look at that option
Yep.
for everyone.
Do we have any data right now on the students who've been part of the embedded early childhood or preschool opportunity at Kennedy, on how they're doing afterwards? Have you been able to track any of that?
We have not, but we can.
Okay.
We do have the ability to do that. We have probably, how many years can we go back now?
Well, this is the 9th year.
Okay.
And so testing didn't really, the testing wouldn't have began until 3rd grade, I think.
Right.
So, I tried to get those numbers. So you're looking at 20 children, and then with, some movement of families in and out. I was able to find some information for maybe 11 to 15 of the kids, but it has not been collected in a formal way, but it certainly is something that we've had conversations about, as that program has gotten enough years that children are in middle school now that originally, were
But
the
just
first
just
group.
thinking, we're in the process right now of looking at facilities. And you both know where I stand on the early childhood stuff. I'm a firm believer that if we're going to redo this, these buildings need to be E buildings first, not K. And I think one thing that'd be a benefit as we move forward as a board and as a community and as a district is to be able to show, if we can, the benefits of embedded early childhood programming in our elementary schools. We just had our last meeting had the data, similar data which you shared, showing us the test scores, how well our students are doing, especially early on. And I can only assume, and most of the data supports this, that the sooner we're engaging, the better return we have. You know, we can talk all we want about trying to get into the mosques or Spanish-speaking churches or Asian populations. The fact of the matter is, what brings all those people in are these buildings called Willmar Public Schools. So why not have them embedded right there in those buildings? I mean, that's where we're really going to be able to make an impact. And I guess my other question would be, would our free and reduced, if early childhood was embedded in some of these elementary schools, would our free and reduced rates help them with scholarship money for families?
The Parent Aware scholarships are based off of that
Okay.
same free and reduced.
We have all of our
scale.
families fill those forms out.
We do.
So it definitely would open up opportunities.
And another question I had was, okay, so we have this reading core that's going on. How do we ease these students? You have about 100 of them into kindergarten next year, because right now you have what's happening at Jefferson and a couple satellites. And other child care providers cannot access this until 2014, and you know it's going to take at least a full year or so to get them up and running. And so my question is, what is your recommendation for blending these children into kindergarten? Because they're going to walk into kindergarten with fluency. They're going to walk in with alliteration. They're going to walk in with different comprehension skills. And so what is your recommendation for blending them into a K class that has 325 to 360 students, and they're a group of 100, which is 1/3 of our body? I mean, I'd like to see that on your childhood cabinet question list. What does that look like?
Is that something that this group would actually do, or is that something that we would have, our two building administrators in those elementaries be in communication with them?
I think that's part of what our charge is to make sure that Cheryl Nash and the elementary administration understand the work that we're doing, so that we can have the conversations when spring hits and what does make the most sense. We're already doing that in our classrooms. When you take the fact that we've got the Creative Kids program is SE students, it's Head Start students, and it's fee-based students. So you've done some of that modeling already, and you've got the mixture of students in that class. What's going to take place in your kindergarten classes can have that same type of conversation. Same thing with age-based. You've got some kindergarten students that are 6+ years old, and other ones that are just hitting 5.
Yep.
So you've got many differences related to that large age gap for those students as well. And you see many studies that talk about what you do with those. And, very good conversations to have across the board.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there's a bridge and there's the conversation that's happening. But I think as we do RTI and you are tapping kids, this first year you're just getting running yourself. But next year, think about your implementation level, the depth, and what you're going to be able to achieve. Because you're already achieving it, whether or not you're part of the reading corps or not, just because you're overlapping instruction and modeling, correct? So I just wanted to make sure that communication is happening to our elementary.
We did meet with, we requested to meet with the kindergarten teachers at both sites and met with them in January at one of their PLCs, and are hoping to keep building on that conversation. There's been, I think, in other buildings and other transitions, elementary to middle school and so forth, there maybe is some communication that exists like that. And so for us to be aware and hopefully carve out some time for us to meet with kindergarten teachers yearly, twice a year, whatever it requires to get that communication going about what's happening as kids are leaving and what's happening as kids are arriving.
That was going to be my follow-up. I'm sorry. That was going to be my follow-up, and I guess I'm going to express it. Somewhat frustrating to hear that, because when I was on the board many years ago, Jody, you and I were on that committee where our priority was to establish benchmarks that kindergarten staff needed our early childhood staff to know. Man, that's almost 10 years ago. And to hear that we're still struggling with that communication, that has got to change. We have got to be working as a district to make sure that we're soaring up these areas. We can't continue to do this. Let the folks at Jefferson, we can't stand by this because we're not in the same building mentality anymore. We've got, so whatever we can do as a board, and I guess I'm challenging our administration too, what can we do to stop this? We can't continue because you're not in our building, we can't communicate mentality. We got to change
Do you want to
that.
mention the campus, what we've done with the campus?
Yep, all of the kids that we see both at Jefferson and satellite sites, all kids have an early childhood tab on campus. And if they've been in one of our programs, they will have the assessment tab, so
Good.
teachers can look at that information. But Mike, I share your frustration, because even when Ann and I were talking this year, we really are trying to nail down what it is, what are those benchmarks, and we're not there yet.
Exactly.
But campus isn't used well by
No.
K-5.
And
No,
did a
it's-
little tutorial at
Yes.
that, at one of the sites, and said, let's, pull it up on the iPad, let's show you exactly what we're talking about, because all of those IGD measurements are entered
there.
now for all of those students. So you can see what happened on October 15th, what happened on January 15th, and again now on April 15th.
You guys have all
Who
this
can
data,
access
you have to
information?
pass it on.
At this point, it's not, I don't know if it's open to parents
Well,
to see
can't
that.
parents just log on to
Oh.
campus
That
portal?
assessment tab?
Because we can see our child's assessments, and it's the same system if you create a code.
It's different at different levels.
It's not posted.
And some things, I mean, that's just starting now with having certain bits of information.
And I understand, yeah.
So.
It's like a training wheel thing.
But we are doing a new assessment program called Teaching Strategies Gold, and that is a 60-point checklist, and that is a separate online assessment, and that does have a parent component where parents are able to log in and
But
see
even
all of that
beyond the
information.
assessment piece, we need you folks over at Jefferson Learning Center and in our satellite sites. There should be something that everybody instructing our earliest learners has that says, our Willmar Public School kindergarten teachers, here are the benchmarks that we're looking for. Here's what we need you to be helping these students know prior to coming into kindergarten. And to hear that we're still not there yet is frustrating, because I know that we worked it, and we talked about it, and I think we need to recognize that. We got to figure out how to sort this up somehow.
Where did that cog in the wheel come from? If you guys started that 10 years ago, where did it
Well, I
train
can
run
say
out of
we
tracks?
sat down, Jody and I were on I sat representing the district with the early childhood piece of it, and I know we sat with, at the time, some of those kindergarten staff, and everybody talked about it,
Yeah.
but I don't know what
We came up with
happened.
that fun little magnet.
Yes.
But that truly isn't the benchmarks that I think the district is now looking for. We just haven't taken it to the next level, and I think there's been a lot of transition with staff. Now we have new administration, the restructuring of schools. Cheryl, I was sitting with Cheryl Nash and a group of elementary administrators, or elementary teachers at the literacy conference a couple weeks ago, and that was the question she asked. What can we do? And